We are going to record the meeting. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I anticipate that I will continue to let people in from the waiting room as we begin because we do have quite a big registration for this event. I know a lot of you, but I'd like to introduce myself anyway. My name is Susan Carnes Hecht. I am a member of the board at the Dutchess County Interfaith Council. I am also currently the president of Vassar Temple Reformed Synagogue in Poughkeepsie. I'm also, in my other spare time, the chair of the Town of Poughkeepsie Climate Smart Task Force and a member of the town's Conservation Advisory Commission. The originator of the town, and I guess now the County Pollinator Pathway Project, and a member, this is my first thing in climate advocacy, a proud member of Citizens Climate Lobby, and we work here in New York's 18th Congressional District with Representative Sean Patrick Maloney on federal carbon pricing legislation, also in Albany. I am very excited to see everyone. I already know a lot of you from these various networks that I'm in, but I'm especially excited about this event because it really brings to fruition my desire to sort of blend my two hats, one being climate advocate and the other being a very, very engaged Reformed Jew. The faith community has a very essential voice in the moral stewardship of our planet. And for me personally, Jewish ethics are really where I return repeatedly to be re-energized for this battle that we have in front of us. So I'm very grateful to Rabbi Jacob, our guest tonight, for supporting this effort. And my fervent desire is that following this session, we will all be able to plot a path forward, pooling our resources and maximizing our mutual efforts. So it's my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Glenn Jacob. He is the executive director of the New York affiliate of Interfaith Power and Light, which is an organization at the intersection of religion and climate change. Rabbi Jacob is also the Hillel director and an adjunct professor in the Honors College at Adelphi University on Long Island. And before coming to New York Interfaith Power and Light, he served synagogues all the way from the Deep South to Long Island for over 25 years. While in the Deep South, Rabbi Jacob was a civil rights advocate on issues of church and state, reproductive rights, hate group monitoring with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and funding for public education. Rabbi Jacob is a graduate of Washington University in St. Louis with a degree in philosophy and a master's degree in Hebrew and ordination from Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati. He also received his Doctor of Divinity from Hebrew Union College. Rabbi Jacob, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to meet all of you. It is a confluence of auspicious occasion. We are in the middle of Ramadan. Easter is this Sunday. Passover begins Friday night, and Earth Day is just next week. So this is an excellent time to bring the focus of religious faith to the most dire crisis facing the planet at this time. Okay, I am going to go to share screen. All right. I also use chat a lot. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you bring up the icons by rolling your mouse over the bottom, you'll see chat. So if you want to ask a question, put it in the chat, and Susan's going to monitor the chat. When I finish the presentation, and we can certainly go into question and answer, typically what I do for a large group, and we are now 23 people together in this room, is if you'd like to ask a question, just type the word stack in the chat, and we go through the stack in the order in which you get your name on the stack. Make sense? You can just nod, it's fine. Fantastic. All right, let's get to the presentation. All right. So, I gotta bring up my screen. All right, so to understand where faith belongs in dealing with climate change. You and I have to work through a certain set of ideas. People do not join a house of worship with the idea that I want to go sit and create a lot of conflict that gets me angry. We go to our house of worship for usually the opposite. We want to find consolation. We want to find peace. We want to find connection. We want to find connection with human beings. We want to find connection with our beliefs in God or deity. However, there is a saying from my tradition that I was taught in seminary, that if people come into the sanctuary agitated, they should leave consoled. And if people come into the sanctuary casual and relaxed, they should leave agitated. Sorry, but it runs that religion is not about some selfish desire to just be, and it's about me. That's new age stuff, that's TikTok and everything else. For those of us in religious traditions, we are a part of a network, whether it's our community we're sitting in at the moment, whether it's the community of congregations that belong within our denomination. We have a world to grapple with as a religious person. And it gives us not only comfort, it gives us a purpose. And that's what we're here to work on. So the picture in front of you is definitely exacerbated by climate change. It is the flooding in Montecito, California in 2018, destroyed a great deal of property, including a Jewish summer camp I had a great deal of love for. So you can see the picture and say, oh boy, we have work. So we begin this evening starting with basic facts. And if you walk away early this evening, I want you to take these 4 facts with you. All right, you can use it in every and any context because we're dealing in fact, not with conjecture. The 4 facts you need to know: climate change is real, climate change is man-made, climate change is happening now, and last week, as of March 31st, I would have said we only have 8 years to avoid catastrophic irreversible change. We're already at the point where we cannot avoid irreversible change, but we could avoid catastrophic change with 8 years. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, released a report on April 1st. It's 3,000 pages long. 195 countries signed on to the treaty for the panel, and all 195 had to sign off on the report, and they did. So while they may have messed a little with the summary, the other 3,000 pages they did not have any say in, and they've come down with telling us, no, no, no. Climate change is happening much more rapidly than we predicted even 5 years ago. And we may have only 3 years to address climate change to avoid catastrophic, irreversible change. That's a scary number. And I'll make it real clear to you, I am a climate refugee. My house was half destroyed by Superstorm Sandy in 2012, October 29th. It was not just the devastation, it's what it did to me and my family. And I vowed that I was going to leave Long Island. It took me 3 years to get out of Long Island once the damage was repaired. But I deliberately moved from Long Island, and I'm now at the Westchester-Putnam County line. So I'm close to you guys. And I am a climate refugee. So the scientific evidence behind the IPCC report. There it is in a nutshell, one graphic. It's very simple. This is the global mean temperatures from 1851 to 2020. I don't have the 2021 numbers yet. But Blue is good, and the darker the red, the worse it is. And so if you start and you start working through the graphic, you will see that as the years march on, our atmosphere warms up until you get to the last 15 years and it starts warming up in some rather stark terms. So that 2019, 2020, and we know 2021 were some of the hottest years on record. And you can see also as well, it's accelerating. So those are the facts that we're going to work with. All right. Let's shift from our facts to what you and I really know. And we're going to use the most ancient stuff I have to work with, which is, if you're Christian, you would call it Old Testament. If you're a Jew, we call it Torah or Tanakh. In this case, it's Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible. Isaiah is an amazing human being. He was a prophet, and he's the only one of the prophets in the ancient text who record their call to prophesy. And this is taken from Isaiah chapter 6, which is his remembrance of being called to prophesy. And so he hears Adonai, God, saying, "Whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" And he replies, "Hineni, here I am, send me." And this becomes the clarion call to moral action. It's founded in this ancient text in a man who lived in the 8th century BCE. He said, "Send me. Let me be God's voice, God's actor on this planet." And that has illumined Western religions ever since. Now, other traditions are here, and in the Eastern traditions, there are suitable leaders from this time, all around this period of 800 to 400 BCE, who all came forth and tied ethics to belief and religion. So we hold on to this, but there's a problem. The prophets in the Western tradition, they died out. By the year 500 BCE, they're gone. Their voices have been silenced. What were we to do? Well, a case came up that affects all of us in the three monotheisms of the West. A great Pharisee by the name of Hillel was asked a ritual question, and he had to admit, much to his humiliation, that he had forgotten the answer. He didn't know. But with great humility, he turned back to the people who asked the question, and he said this line: "Look to the people. If they are not prophets, then they are children of the prophets." And it's this idea that was presented just before Christianity came on the scene. And then later, when Muhammad records the Quran, the same idea becomes infused in the text, that you and I may not be prophets, but the prophetic tradition is passed down to us, that our morals and our ethics compel us to act to make this a godly world. The creation, what you and I now enjoy, is a gift from God. And our moral responsibility is to maintain, preserve, and promote this great gift that God has given us, a creation. So today, the way we say it, at least I say it when I speak to groups like you, is that it is only the moral voice that can speak truth to power. And the best presenters of the moral voice are you. You who come from your belief traditions, because you are speaking with knowledge of your traditions with belief in your traditions, and with conviction that your tradition brings life and blessing to this world. So there's your moral call of why you need to address the facts that I gave you first. It's now your responsibility. You can no longer say, I didn't know. Well, now you do. And as we say in my tradition, Mazel Tov. Welcome. Welcome to this great, amazing journey where we can actually save our planet from ourselves. Question is, how do you want to do it? So if you're ready, we'll move on. Okay. First of all, this picture was only taken 2 weeks ago. I was in Kanakali, Turkey, just driving down the street, and this purple kiosk box thing pops up. And if you look at it, you don't have to understand Turkish. It's a terribly hard language to learn, I found out. But you can see just by the images on the box that this is a recycling bin for electronics. Now, I don't know about you, but if I want to recycle electronics, unless my county sponsors it, and there's very few counties in New York State that does sponsor, my university sponsors it once a year. So if I miss that one Saturday, and of course it's my Shabbat, but if I miss that one Saturday, my electronics don't get recycled. But here we are in Kanakali, Turkey, which is on the Aegean Sea. It's a small industrial city, nothing particularly special as far as cities go. And yet they have this recycling bin of some of the most toxic material we have in our houses today, which is the guts of our electronic world. Fantastic. It means, folks, that there's all sorts of things we can do to address climate change. And look what they're doing in Turkey. Okay, so we're going to start within the congregation, and then we'll move to beyond the congregation. Right. The first thing you need to know when working in a congregation is all boards of directors or elders, whatever you call your board that runs the congregation, is that they have what we call fiduciary responsibility. That is, their job is to make sure your congregation stays afloat. They are to make sure that your clergy and staff get paid, that programs can go forward because there's the funding. They're there to make sure the lights go on and the carpets are cleaned. So addressing climate change has to fit within fiduciary responsibility, because most of us don't have angel donors anymore. That was from a different generation. We go year by year. All of us, at least in New York State that I've met, 9 out of 10 congregations work hard to meet their budget every year. And okay, that's just what it is. So addressing climate change is actually at this point a very good response to the fiduciary responsibility that the board holds as responsible. The term that we use is sustainability. We want to reduce your carbon footprint. You are, as a congregation, if you have a building, you are a small commercial building, according to the New York State. Small commercial buildings make up 80%, make up 80% of the commercial buildings in New York State. Therefore, there is a great deal of effort by the state to pursue reducing the carbon footprint of these buildings. Doesn't mean it always helps a house of worship, but there's a lot of work. What we in the interfaith world talk about is what any congregation can do. Typically, what we do is, before you do any work on your building, we suggest you get an energy audit. And now in New York, to get a real energy audit is about $3,000. I don't want to, fool you into saying, oh, it's easy. No, it's about $3,000. And they used to be partly sponsored by the state, but our former governor got rid of that, has a cost saving measure. And it was not brought back in the budget that just passed, right? We are going to be mandating as a state that as your furnace and your boiler die in your buildings and in your households, by the way, that we are going to be encouraging until we mandate that you switch to a heat pump, an air sourced heat pump, as opposed to a ground sourced heat pump, which is geothermal. But heat pumps are, one, they're much more energy efficient. So they save you a lot of money and they get you away from my last fuel oil bill, which I got last week, which was a shock. Landscaping. No one understands, many don't understand often enough just how destructive and carbon producing formal landscaping is. As a house of worship, you can have a much more natural landscape and be a good custodian of your land. Light bulbs, we know that's how we started back in 2004, was showing you light bulbs. And refrigerators, for those of you who have older buildings built in the 50s and the 60s, your ancestors who founded those buildings and congregations were convinced to put in a commercial refrigerator. Well, commercial refrigerators are meant to run at a steady temperature of wherever you set it at, 30 degrees, and have the doors opened 100 to 150 times a day. That's a lot of electricity that's used to maintain a commercial refrigerator that most congregations don't use. So all of this is contained in, for NYIPL, our Green Team Manual, and that's available for free as a download from our website. And it goes into much more detail than I'm going to do in this presentation. But understand there's a lot you can do as a congregation, from low-hanging fruit to more difficult branches and twigs within your congregation, with just a few people working to make it happen. And of course, talking to your board and seeing if you can't make it part of the mission of your congregation. That's good stuff. Once you get beyond trying to work to reduce your carbon footprint by swapping out outdated technology, sealing your doors, sealing your roofs, and all of the other things that are worthwhile, the next step is switching your providers for electricity. The idea is we need to get away from natural gas. Coal is almost dead in New York State. The last utilities are closing. And you can thank Sierra Club Beyond Coal campaign for a good deal for that to happen. And so we need to move to wind and solar and geothermal. Now, I don't know how much geothermal is available in Dutchess County. It's really mostly in Westchester County because there's a lot of money in Westchester County because it's the most expensive right now. Solar, however, has become a new farm. And the picture you see right there is a solar farm in Syracuse, New York. I will tell you the latest farm that opened was by Common Energy. It's in Suffolk County, which is the eastern half of Long Island. And they opened a solar farm on top of a Walmart. And they're sold out. They've already sold all their shares of electricity they're going to be generating. Like that. So we're blessed because we're in the Hudson Valley. We have a number of solar farms, and you can actually look up and see what's available by going to your utility's website and digging through the website to find the community solar webpage. Every utility in New York State is mandated to offer community solar. However, in that mandate, they do not explain or dictate to the utility companies that they have to make it easy for you, the consumer, to find it. So I'm in NYSEG country. It took me a while. And you can also do it for your household. You can organize within Dutchess County. I just got notice from Sustainable Westchester, which is a county-wide consortium run by the county government, that the nonprofits that I actually on the board of just got switched to community solar through Sustainable Westchester. They just did it for us. Only asked if I wanted to opt out and didn't even give me much time to do that. Not that I would. So community solar is easily available. It doesn't cost you anything to switch to it or cost the congregation anything to switch to community solar. And I can already tell you that I'm saving on my household bills 10 to 20% a month. And that's a big deal. Now, for those who want to even go further, we still talk about solar. Solar has dropped in price 75% in the last 20 years. Solar is now affordable. Now, for households, we talk about putting it on rooftops. Sometimes commercial buildings we do. Sometimes we talk about congregations having land surrounding their property, that it's cheaper, easier, and safer to put their solar actually on their own property next to the buildings. We have a congregation in Buffalo, New York, that is actually putting it behind the parking lot where they would park for the big holidays. And they just said, fine, we'll just put it there. We'll worry about parking another day. Solar is incredible. One, you can generate so much electricity that you actually make money because you generate more than you need. The drawback of solar in New York State is that the utilities got a law passed that you cannot connect the solar panels directly to your electric supply in your building. That is illegal. You must connect your solar panels to the grid. It goes out on the grid, you get credit, and then you bring in electricity from the grid like you normally would. And the two prices are reconciled. The only exception to it, because it wasn't considered at the time, is electric vehicles. So if you would like to own an electric vehicle, you too can put up one solar panel and connect it directly to a socket on the side of your house or on the side of the congregation's building. And it doesn't have to go on the grid, and you can charge your vehicle for free. So solar promises to be part of our future. There's much more that goes into it because we're going to have to rebuild our infrastructure of delivering electricity between neighborhoods and towns, townships, and the like. The electric grid that you and I use now was invented in 1910, give or take. And, you know, we've learned a few things about electricity and delivering electricity since then. There's a lot of pushback from the utilities because they make a lot of money charging you to keep their lines live. Matter of fact, the whole battle with Indian Point nuclear power plant was over 2 transmission lines that went from Canada to New York City. Indian Point nuclear power plant never charged the light bulbs in one house in New York State. It only charged those 2 transmission lines. Wow, that's a lot of wasted electricity that with modern technology and computers and a digital revolution in electronics, we shouldn't have to pay for anymore. So that's kind of the areas where you can look at your congregation and say, we can work in these areas and there's all sorts of things we can do. It's low-hanging fruit. We can pluck it easily and we can support the congregation and fulfill our mission to reduce our carbon footprint in the world. Okay, so we're going to move beyond the interior of your building itself. And we're going to go outside. We're going to go beyond the congregation's door. We're going to talk about where Well, quite frankly, I really need your help. It's not just me. It's everybody in New York State, including yourself. The fossil fuel industry creates 70% of the carbon pollution in the world every day. If you yourself were to take your household, turn it solar, seal up everything, get rid of your gas-powered engines that you use, from your lawnmower to your stovetop, and everything went electric, you would be 0.001% of the solution. Addressing the fossil fuel industry is 70% of the solution. That's why we really need your help. That's part of the reason why you're here tonight, even if you don't really want to hear all of this message. And I apologize, I don't always give good news. At the New York State level, we now have the Climate Action Council. In 2019, New York State passed a law called the Climate and Community Protection Act, but Governor Cuomo didn't like it because he didn't own the name. So he changed it to the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It passed in July of 2019, and it founded the mandate that New York State go all electric by 2050, and that we cut our carbon emission in half by 2030. The mandate stated that we form a Climate Action Council that take 2 years to study the issue and then issue a scoping plan that would decide how we're going to reach our goals in 2030 and 2050. We are now in the next phase with public hearings happening last week, this week, and through April for the scoping plan. This coming week, it's going to be Albany and Binghamton. Last week was the Bronx and Manhattan and Brooklyn, I believe. So, and this is run through a department, an agency in New York State called NYSERDA, New York State Energy Development, a research agency, agency. So NYSERDA is the people who decide how we regulate climate change through our electric grids in New York State. They also run a number of other programs. At the federal level, where if you follow the news at all, it's not been a happy time either. The process of addressing climate change began in the House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis, which involved many New York State representatives. This is only in the House of Representatives. The Senate does not have a committee, a select committee on climate. And if you know AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is one of the main drivers of this House Select Committee. So it's very much buried in New York State. Both of our senators, Schumer and Gillibrand, are very committed to addressing the climate crisis and have been very involved in trying to pass the legislation, which, if you follow the news, is known. It's been held up, quite frankly, by 2 senators alone at the last moment. But please don't just focus on them, focus on a good half of the Senate that's not passing the climate change legislation either. There are national coalitions. I'm Interfaith Power and Light. We join with other coalitions. We join other relations to form coalitions. But tonight we don't talk about that stuff because that's much different. Tonight I want to go back to the state and tell you about the coalition to which I belong. New York Renews, which is the one on the right. New York Renews is 300 environmental organizations and businesses around New York State. It's the largest climate coalition in New York State. Governor Cuomo was forced to admit at the signing ceremony that the only reason why he was signing that legislation was because the New York Renews Coalition forced his hand. So it's been a very effective group. It's made up of very different sorts of groups, of which just one part of it is faith engagement. And I'm not the only faith engagement guy anymore, and it's just wonderful. We just did major action on the New York State budget. The New York State budget was released yesterday. Today's Monday. Yesterday, it was finally released in total. So, but on March 8th, these guys were marshals for the largest rally in Albany at the state capitol in 2 years. Yeah, I'm the second guy from the left. But understand, the guy next to me with the red on his hat, he is the leader of the Interfaith group in Rochester, New York. And the guy on the far right, he's Citizens Climate Lobbying, but also a church, I like to say, an active Episcopalian. So there's a lot of faith that runs through our climate movement here in New York State. And what we were doing that day was taking that group on the left that was just coming together and creating the group on the right, which became the press conference that forced the issue that day. What we were asking for on March 8th was $15 billion in a dedicated line in the budget for climate change initiatives spelled out in the mandate we already passed. Now, NYSERDA came out at that time and said, well, we need at least $10 billion. So 15 billion was a little high, but we know we needed it. 10 billion was certainly in the ballpark, and we were willing to fight for that too. But when the budget came out on Sunday, our state legislators chickened out. And they offered, instead of a budget line, they offered what's called the Bond Act. It's a vote that must be taken in November by New York State citizens in the election. And it's only for $4.3 billion. So there is a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, because our legislators did not rise to the absolute catastrophic need that we know from the facts is happening now and will affect every farm in Dutchess County. It will affect your households. It will affect your businesses. And it's going to be much sooner than later. So, this is one of your state senators. His district, this is Senator Pete Harckham, and his district is on the eastern half of Dutchess County, all of Putnam County, and a western part of Westchester County. He's actually my state senator too. And he's very much engaged. He is a great voice for fighting for climate change legislation in New York State at the state level. He did not prevail. But this is a screenshot of people of faith and New York Renews lobbying the state senator. And you can see we're all citizen lobbyists. None of us are wearing ties. We are there to lobby as citizens, asking our state senator to fight for the dedicated line in the budget. So if you think it's scary to go lobby, we're just normal people, just like you are. Some have more hair than others, but it's just actually, if you notice, Tara is a person I lobby with often. Look at the big smile on her face. You can't miss it. And it's really is a joy to be part of the lobby efforts once you get over that initial fear of talking to strangers. So it's one of the things we do as an organizing organization in New York State. We want to talk to our legislators, but we as people of faith, we have a very different message. We don't talk about the science. We don't talk about the engineering. We don't even make the arguments that the environmental agencies and organizations make. No, as people of faith, we actually come in typically at the close, and we talk about moral courage, moral cowardice, and the courage to live by one's morals and ethics, and what that requires of the creation. So we come in with a very specific type of message that no one else in our coalition, when we lobby, can say or offer. And let me tell you, when I called Senator Harckham a moral hero, he lit up. It was a tremendous moment for him, and it was a tremendous moment for me because it was a truth. He was one of the people who fought for our climate work. So where does that leave us? As I told you early on, fossil fuels represent 70% of the carbon pollution. And as we ask congregations across New York State to get involved in the climate change crisis, we understand you need to involve your congregation at a level where they can participate with their own hands, with their own actions and deeds. And that is reducing the carbon footprint in their congregation. But we also ask people to step forward and speak truth to power, to speak forth about climate change legislation that has to happen, because that's our target, the fossil fuel industry. We have to bring down that number. We must bring it down quickly. And sad to say, I can count very quickly the number of climate change lobbyists from the faith traditions in New York State. There's not as many of us as I would like, and there's not as many of us that we need. So we are always on the lookout to train people who are interested in learning how to lobby as a person of faith within the climate movement. So that's always an opportunity for any given person. All right, as we start to wind this down, let me tell you where exactly we stand. We have the science to reduce the carbon footprint, to bring down the temperature back to 1.5 degrees above the median temperature that we had. We'll never get back to the ones we had. We have the technology to do it. We have all the technology we need to start the process. Anyone else who says they are waiting for more technology to come online, it'll be great, it'll solve the whole problem, are either delusional or not admitting that they can't get it online in mass production and in use in the 3 to 8 years we have to avoid irreversible catastrophic change. So what we lack truly is the political will to act. It is only our politicians that are preventing the United States of America and New York State from implementing the laws that will produce a carbon neutral energy future. And that's the only thing we lack. Okay. I wouldn't be a good rabbi if I didn't do my education properly. So the topics we covered tonight, we'd introduced facts, including the graphic on heat. We talked about faith, and we concluded how our faith, in the end, is a moral voice, and that's the tool we use. We then stepped over to discuss actions you can do within your congregation, especially if you have a building, and actions you can do outside of your congregation. And finally, hopefully I drilled into you the urgency to address climate change now, within the next few years in front of us. So that's what we covered. Now, our next steps for you. If this is a clarion call to you, then what you do within a congregation is you form a green team. We just use that term. You can call it whatever you want within your congregation that meets your theological needs. Next, you bring in me, New York Interfaith Power and Light, to help organize. That's what we do. That's what our donors pay us or give us donations to do, is to help congregations organize their response to climate change, reducing their carbon, training volunteers. This is what we do. Then you have an opportunity as well to meet allies in faith. One you're doing tonight with this group, but within New York State itself, and brand new operating right now out of Hudson, is a new Green Faith community, which also is interfaith and covers national and international issues. And they're doing small events up and down the Hudson River. Diana just came up to speed. I have to admit, when I came in 2015 as the executive director of Interfaith Power and Light, there were almost no rabbis involved nationwide. Jews involved nationwide was negligible. The Jewish traditions were the furthest behind all the Protestant dominations and even the Catholic Church. It was a bad scene. Now we have Diana, we have the Jewish Earth Alliance. Both are taking up a lot of speed and are really on track to make a difference from the Jewish perspective. Creation Justice Ministries is Protestant and evangelical. They're based in Washington, D.C., but they do a lot of work through our state. Green Muslims, for those from the Islamic tradition, is based here in Manhattan. For Friends, there is no better committee in Washington, D.C. than the Friends Committee on National Legislation. You ever want to know what's going on the national front with legislation, you go to their website. The Friends will tell you they are truly committed and they are up front. One of the major issues in climate change is environmental justice. If you want to know what are the most polluted neighborhoods in all of New York State, you look for the neighborhoods that are demographically Black and brown. Those are the most polluted. This information and our response to it, actually, it's across the whole United States, just New York State, is based through the NAACP, led by Jackie Patterson in this division, and she is tremendous. And it is a constant drumbeat to convince our legislators that not only do we have to address climate change, we have to address the messes we've made so far in polluting our lands. It also includes our indigenous people as well, by the way. And of course, regardless of what denomination you are, odds are your national denominational office has already started the process of addressing climate change and have staff on tap. They have programs already written. They have manuals and papers ready to direct you and explain to you the theology that you need from your tradition, but also the actions that other congregations within your denomination have taken and are willing to help you do. And then you have other allies in the area. New York Renews Coalition is statewide. And if you really need to dig more into climate change itself, Al Gore's Climate Reality Project is always available. And they have speakers who will come online with either this board or at your house of worship, and they'll do an hour and a half training on what climate change is and why you should still have hope that we can address it. I've worked with several of them, and if you need a name, I can always give you a name. They're a great group to work with when we're going back to help people understand, again, what we're facing. So this comes to the end of the presentation. You need to get in touch with me. There's my email, gjacob at inmyipl.org. Our general email is right underneath. You can always follow us on Facebook, but I admit I'm scared of Facebook these days. I really don't like promoting them. I just use it for professional reasons. Don't hold it against me, please. But you can look at our website. The akalim.org website is the new Jewish initiative that I put up because there was nothing there before. But New York IPL has all sorts of resources on it, including all the various areas of climate change, things you can do now. We keep a blog going. Everything is there to get you in contact and going. And that's the idea. We want to inform you, compel you, and get you started to address this crisis that's in our midst. So friends, I thank you much for listening to me. I'm going to stop the share and we'll start with questions and answers if you're ready.
Rabbi, thank you. We do have a few people who did as you asked and went with stack. Would you like me to find those?
Well, sure.
Okay.
I see.
Our first question actually is from Teresa. If you want to unmute yourself, Teresa. Hi.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Susan. Hi. I just wanted to make a comment about an observation that I made when I was out west. And I was very impressed passing a school and noticing the parking out. Well, this was Arizona, so it was very sunny. The cars were all in shade in the parking lot because they had solar panels over them. And I thought, what a wonderful, wonderful idea. And it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. So I don't know how common that is, but
it's
a great
getting
use
more
of
and more
space.
common. It's getting more and more common, and airports are doing it now. Many airports that have to upgrade are using their big old parking lots and their big nasty old parking garages to put up panels. And it's a big movement in the sun states. Now understand, for those of us here in New York State, because we're a little further north, we have to have roofs that face either east or south. So if you don't have a roof facing east or south that's not blocked by trees or other buildings, and apparently 80% of most houses are not eligible in New York State because of these restrictions. Or should you be blessed with a congregation that's on the National Registry, you'll never get solar panels on the roof. So yeah, there's all sorts of new innovating things. As a matter of fact, if you have a flat roof, you can put solar panels on the flat roof as of 2 years ago without using bolts that penetrate your roof barrier. They now have the ability to attach it to your roof without challenging the integrity of the roof.
I wanted to comment before we move on to other questions. Some of you know that DCIC previously had a deal with Nexamp Community Solar, which was beneficial for the planet, beneficial for DCIC, beneficial for your congregations. I've been working with John McKenna. We are trying to get a renewal of that agreement. If we can't make it happen, we'll look elsewhere, but we want to facilitate that for you guys. So please be aware of that. Let's go on to the next question from Judy and Jean. You have a question about Bill McKibben's. Do you want to just go ahead and unmute and ask your question, Judy and Jean?
Yes. First of all, hello, Rabbi Glenn, and thank you so much. It's great to have you here. Last week, I was taking a class in climate change, and Bill McKibben came on and talked about his latest project, which is called Act 3. And he was looking straight at us 60s people who had put out for any number of issues, be it civil rights or on up. and said that he is working to try and take the power out of the fossil fuel industry by going to their funders, some of the big banks that have our credit cards, and asking us to put our credit cards elsewhere, not these big four banks. And that would include Chase and Citibank and Wells Fargo. And guess what? I can't remember the last one. No
Bank of
surprise.
America.
Bank of America. Thank you. Do you have anything to add about that, Rabbi?
Yes, it's one of the, actually, there's a lot of denominations are asking congregations to consider moving their bank accounts to either regional banks or local banks to support their communities, but also, just demanding that we use our money. Excuse me. Put our money where our mouth. Put your money where your mouth is, I believe, is the cliche. And yeah, we do. Who is doing a protest this week? Is it Green Faith that's doing a protest in front of the Chase Bank in Ossining in Westchester County? Or no, it's Diana. It's the Jewish group. But they're doing a protest in front of Chase Bank in Ossining. So yeah, where you bank, how you use your credit cards, they can all make a difference. But what really makes the difference in the end is being loud and vocal in a public arena. And that means letters to the editor. That means challenging people on the websites. By the way, the fossil fuel industry is worth $10 trillion a year. Okay? That's how much they're worth. They spend a few billion every year on climate change denial. So they have paid people who follow letters to the editor. They follow feeds on all the social media. They are the trolls. They are the people who try to spin whatever crisis or facts come down the pike. And it's up to us, who are not paid, as people of faith, to actually speak up and challenge what I consider malicious lies, which in religious language is evil. To challenge the evil. And so, yeah, it's Bill is a tremendous advocate. I mean, #1 in anyone's book. It's not enough. I know he's looking for every avenue to get people involved. It's not enough. You've got to speak up. You got to challenge our banks. You got to challenge our government. You got to challenge our legislators.
The next question comes from Richard Maddox. So Richard, I know you have your camera off, so I'll just go ahead and read this because you sent it, if that's okay, you sent it in the chat privately to me. Richard is asking about the specific language in the holy books of the faith traditions that assigns us the moral, ethical responsibility for earth stewardship. And he's specifically interested in knowing if Genesis refers to human dominion over the earth or stewardship over earth. That is Richard's question.
Richard, I wish I had you in my class at college. Okay, all right. So let's start with one very simple truth. When the ancient holy texts were written, even as late as Quran, no one had any concept that human beings could destroy the world with climate change. So we're not going to find specifically the idea of shepherding or maintaining or preserving the world by addressing climate change in our ancient text. It's not there because they never conceived of such a notion. Now, many denominations use the Genesis text, and it's a matter of translation from the ancient Hebrew into modern English, as opposed to going through the Greek, the Latin, the King James Version, where you get the word dominion inserted, that human beings shall have dominion over the world, over the creation. So another way to read the text is that we have responsibility to maintain the creation, and that's subject to argumentation by anyone who wants to make a theological argument, and that's where you get in trouble. So instead, what I argue from the traditions in the Hebrew Bible is not to look at Genesis, but to look at Leviticus. And in the book of Leviticus, it's a manual. It's a manual of how the ancient priesthood of the Israelite cult operated. How did they pray to God? And the funny thing is, to pray to God is the wrong term. The ancient Israelite priests believed that they were a temple vessel, that they had to purify the outside of their body, put on purified garments, but they also had to purify the inside of their body with the foods they ate, the proper foods that made their bodies pure. And only by being totally pure inside and out could they be the temple vessel that connected the heavens to the earth, or human beings to their God. Now, in the course of history of Israel, at least in the Hebrew scriptures, the temple was defiled twice and had to be completely purified again. And it's that purification process of purifying ourselves, purifying the vessels, and finally purifying the building itself, that you find a ancient theology that matches the challenge of climate change. And I have a publication on that. And you can find it on my website. I think the link is still live, but it was peer reviewed and published in the CCI and my Rabbi Union's journal. So you can read that theology if you really want to dive into it. But it's one of the issues that I always have with theology is, since theology can never be proven by fact, it's always driven by philosophy, it's always driven by the human heart, it can always be challenged by those who have less than stellar agendas. So by all means, go forward, sir, but you have been warned. It's not you.
Luann has a question for Rabbi Jacob and really for everyone. Well, we could spend a lot of time. Luann is curating a new page of resources relating to faith and the environment on the website compassionatechristianity.org. And if you could recommend one resource for it, what would it be? And before Rabbi Jacob answers, I want to mention that on the Green Team page on the DCIC site, I have a huge list of things from different faiths just for you to look at.
And I have the same page. I have the same page. But it's also looking at who writes clearly. And that's always been an issue of trying to get material. The evangelical ELC, Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, which is either evangelical or Lutheran, as they tell me in their introduction of themselves, has a tremendous amount of material, but a lot of it is steeped in their language of theology. So I don't find it always that useful to use. They have all the answers I'm looking for, trying to explain. Creation Justice Ministries has a website that's wonderful, has a lot of materials on it. The National Conference, the Friends Committee on National Legislation presents, again, it's from the Friends, but the Friends cover a tremendous amount of material, has a tremendous amount of material on the theology of why we need to act. And then, of course, your national denominations are always, and if you don't see it right away on the website, just call your national office. I guarantee you there is a staff person who's assigned the portfolio of environment, and they're very, very lonely. They're just waiting for your phone call because no one else has called them.
Does anyone else have a particular suggestion in response to Luann's question? Please just unmute if you do.
I'm also going to put my email address in the chat. So, sometimes it's hard to think when you're sitting here, but if you think of anything later on, anyone can just send that to me and I would appreciate that. Thanks.
So that's a good point at which I would like to say tonight was envisioned as a sort of starting or jumping off point for our local faith community to figure out how we can move forward in our congregations, but also outside our walls, as Rabbi talked about. I would, and the DCIC board is going to probably have some discussion about how we feel we can support this. But I would like going forward, not to lose this momentum, obviously, that we're building here in this shared space. And I do have, of course, the list of all the people who registered and attended. I will save the chat. I have all of that. I will hopefully update the DCIC Green Team page with a recording of this session and some other information. But what I'm going to do is I am going to take that list of people from tonight. I have all the emails because of the registrations, and send a message out to everyone who is here or intended to be here, following up so that we can talk together about how to move forward. I don't know if we'll schedule another meeting, or I would like to hear from everyone. I can't obviously do all this myself, but I would love to be able to hear from everyone with ideas about how we can go forward. I mean, there's so much that we can do, and I think help each other. And I've heard of some very interesting things. For example, Jewish Climate Action Network, which is national but particularly active very close by here in Massachusetts, has some wonderful ideas for, I can't remember what they call it, but it's a peer-to-peer program where people come together and share on what they think are the big three, for example, solar, electric vehicles, and heat pumps. And you get people who have done these things in their houses, and they come and they just talk in very concrete terms about, this is how I did it, this is what it cost, these are the rules, these are the tax credits. We could have that kind of activity. Those are all very different things from political activity, so we all need to talk about how we would like to organize in our community on this. That does not have to be specifically through DCIC, but I would like to at least be a clearinghouse for information going forward. So I will write to everyone. We can start a Google group, or we can do something like that, so that we have a way to be in contact with each other. A Google group is something I set up for the pollinator pathway, which seems to be working really well. So we'll figure that out. We will figure that out. Just wanted to make sure everybody heard that. I'm going to look in the chat because it looks like there's a couple more things. And Luann has her address there, so if anybody has more information, please check the chat. Her address is there. Are there any more questions for Rabbi Jacob? Please just go ahead.
I just wanted to offer a scriptural reference. Someone asked earlier if there was one. And of course, my husband, who is a human, what do you call that?
A student of the Bible.
Yeah. He's a walking Bible. Here it is. It's in Revelations chapter 11, verse 18, and it says, "And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, same small and great, and shouldest destroy them that destroy the earth." Isn't that great?
Thank you for explaining that. I wrote it down from the chat, and I was like, I'm going to have to look that one up.
Yeah. Chapter 11, verse 18 speaks right to it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Okay. If there are no more specific questions, I'm just going to put this up. This is my own contact information, but you guys will all hear from me. So you don't need to worry about writing this down if you don't want to. And then I also have the website for New York IPL, but I believe Rabbi Jacob had a more detailed slide. But when I write out to everyone, we will include all of that information. You don't have to go through us to find New York Interfaith Power and Light. You can find them directly. But I hope everyone will be in touch. Okay. What else? Anything else, Rabbi Jacob, that we should cover tonight before we?
We covered so much ground. I'm afraid I'll scare everybody away.
Okay. Very good. Okay, and thank you, Judy and Jean, for what you wrote in here. I am so thrilled to have gotten to this point tonight. It's incredibly meaningful to me personally to be here doing this. I want to share with all of you, because many of you know me, that I am taking possession of a plug-in vehicle this week, and I am pretty excited. I know it's only 0.00001, but it is something. I got my solar panels on my house, so we all need to be doing those things too. And anybody who wants a ride, let me know. I'm very excited to plug in my car. Other than that, if we're done, if there's no more questions, we will conclude, and you guys will all hear from me. And we are recording, so we'll put that on the DCIC website as well. And I will remove the spotlight. So thank you all for being here, and we will be in touch. Rabbi Jacobs, thank you for helping us start down this path. Thank you very much.
God bless.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.